I mix what I like, what I like.
I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy. Get healthy.
I mix what I like, what I
We're
like.
here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy liked and other cool things.
Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome back to I Mix What I Like right here on Black Liberation Media. Happy Monday morning. I'm Jared Ball. Very excited to be your host on what I hope will be a fine start to your week. Please do like, share, subscribe, support our Patreon. Links are all in the show description. Tell a friend to tell a friend that even though we're not live, it's back on again. I'm off in, yikes. Off in one of my 4-4, handling that 4-4. The only 4-4 I pack is a course load. Oh, it's good to be back here after a very exciting weekend. Listen, there could not be a better time than to like, share, subscribe, recommit to this wonderful platform. We just got some great news over the weekend. Just announced to our collective I'm going to let them determine how we break the news to you all. It's fantastic news. Like straight up, fantastic news. I just don't want to hog the spotlight in terms of the delivery of the good news. We are a collective, and I think it's a collective share in this big, big win for the platform. So make sure not only are you have you liked, shared, and subscribed, not only make sure have you subscribed to Patreon, make sure you have that bell rung. So when announcements drop, you be in the mix, pun intended. All right, got a number of things to get to today. Including the reveal, the launch. What's my man's name from The Big Short? What's his name? Ken from Barbie. When he talked about having the quant that he needed to put all the numbers together. Well, I've got my quant team together, currently investigating and compiling the latest in Vernon philosophy ratings, and we need those ratings. So my quants are busy compiling the data so that we can get an accurate VP rating for Rebel Ridge coming from America and Black Power Mixtape. And I'll explain that reference, that renewed or in a little bit later. But we need these accurate ratings. We can't have people just randomly going out here listening to discussions of the Vernon philosophy and hearing complaints or criticisms. We need ratings. We need to get the data. So we got the quants quantifying the data currently. We'll get to that at the end of the show. Okay. So again, to those who are here early, gather up your folks. Go ahead and tag Black Liberation Media on Twitter and Instagram or wherever else. And let us know that you're reposting and retweeting our stuff. Go ahead and tag I Mix What I Like and let me know that you're engaging with the work and sharing the work. Because the rating system. But stay tuned. So we're going to get to that. The quants are busy at work. But first, my homeboy tried to tell you. My homeboy tried to tell you that there was a problem. And we've talked about a little bit of this contradiction. There were a lot of victory lapping around happening lately around Kendrick Lamar over Drake. But King.
There you go. Give me one more. Ah.
Ooh, this is not a good look. What's happening here?
Just like that. You ready? Exactly.
It does sound like he's blocking that though, doesn't he?
My name Kendrick Lamar, and I'll be performing at Super Bowl 59. Will you be pulling up?
Nope.
I hope so. You know it's only one opportunity to win a championship. No round twos. Let's get it.
You heard that? No round two.
Boom.
Boom.
I won't want you to miss it. Meet me in New Orleans, February 9th.
Wow.
2025. Wear your best dress too, even if you're watching from home. Let's go. Yay! That's what I'm talking about, man. Now we can get to it for real. Come on, you gotta.
That's a big flag back there. That's your king? Oh man, but this is we talked about it before where Kendrick Lamar played the go between in the Cash App ad. So this is in many ways consistent. It's just we are encouraged, and this is sort of a theme that we'll be talking about throughout the day. This is important. This is in fact why we have worked so assiduously to develop the VP awards, the ratings, because this is actually a real problem where we continue to get false presentations of progress and radicalism. And we're supposed to find ourselves in that and our desires in that. And yet it ends up being co-opted. We got the flag, we got the Super Bowl, we got Jay-Z who's helping this in part as a response to Colin Kaepernick and the effort there to condemn what is even getting sort of renewed attention in the news lately around the Pentagon's paid displays of military strength before football games and baseball games. So but so he's going to be with the flag folded back up in that, and this is yet someone who is being presented as a leading, dare I say,
the coach's top thought leader.
But this particular situation, out of many situations that I didn't hate, I'm going to have to hate until further notice.
But I'm going to play it again because, first of all, it's Monday morning. We all deserve this. But big shout out and salute to Skip Coon. Big shout out and salute to his new album, August, where, again, he broke this down already.
Talking about Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Y'all were really enjoying that, weren't you? Very disappointed in you. So, y'all looked at two rappers supported by two machines, right? They told you Kendrick Lamar was an independent artist that was signed to Jimmy Iovine. That's crazy. That's diabolical work. That's crazy work. Then he said, I hate Drake so much, I'm going to get on Amazon and do a concert, and y'all watched it. Diabolical work.
Message.
I know they watched it. They was on the internet watching it. No, you did. It's okay. So this is my response to rap beef. What is gotta talk about? I'm official, you not. He a dummy, he a sucker, that's the kettle and pot. I'm like this metal though. These clowns is what y'all settle for by arguing Pinocchio. The problem is Geppetto bro is Malico. We talking 1911. Jackals is what I'm prepping. Every man need a weapon. Suckers ain't interested. I'm just black power and black love that's intersected. Jesus, black thought, white thoughts, to my confessions. God love it, I ain't tripping, I ain't stressing. I say the round for you, you need it, come get a blessing. You can't be an alpha omega because you ain't stepping. I'm bound. I come from in and stand. I'm in the field and they just sit and stand. Take the bass out your voice if you ain't got no gun in your hand. I do what I want. They don't even do what they can. They do what they told. I got no love for my foes. They can mimic my delivery and copy my pros. But they can't comprehend how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't come from the same cloth. They come from the same room. Pick similar shapes and even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the console. I teach gifted children who can come in this classroom.
I mix what I like. You know what that is.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
So I do what I want. They don't even do what they can. So I thought I would just start off with that. It was wild being put onto that. And yeah. So we have work to do. All right. So in response to, let's see, I really do love when this happens. I won't front. I do. I appreciate when folks appreciate what we do around here and even look for us to do around here what we do. And so I want to shout out one of my favorite Twitter handles, Ella Septima Hamer at jbruce41. Need that BLM media review. And as this blue check account says, Rebel Ridge 2024 Netflix on Netflix is awesome. It's not about race, but is a methodical paced movie about a combat trained man trying to take down a corrupt small town police force. Need that BLM review. So I took that as so I expect I will not be the only one on this platform to have something to say. Maybe we'll be back again in various combinations, or others on this platform will have something to say about this, and I encourage that they do. There's zero chance I will get all of it correctly assessed and captured by myself. But this is a perfect example for why we need the VP ratings. I need to elevate my efforts with the Vernon philosophy, because this film is not, as I'm noted here, it's not threat level Selma. If as I would argue, films like Selma, the Wakanda nonsenses, the Judas and the Black Messiah, Spike Lee's Malcolm X, of course, given what we're looking at here, the Genius series, Amazon series on Malcolm and Martin, those are more threat level Selma. Selma being Ava DuVernay's public relations masterpiece of anti-historical propaganda, erasing Kwame Ture, who we'll be talking about a little later, from the whole story of Selma in an attempt to create a fabrication of that history that ultimately, as I continue to argue, speaks to, or is an attempt to speak to people who might today look at the contradictions of society and want to rebel, and tell them, here are the acceptable forms and here are the forms that are not acceptable. So what I'm saying is this film, Rebel Ridge, is not threat level Selma, because first of all, it's not depicting or attempting to depict a radical revolutionary figure or historical moment or movement that it's not depicting anything like that. So it's automatically not going to hit the heights of threat level Selma. In many ways, you could argue this makes it more sophisticated, more complicated, more of a threat. But for now, I'm just going to argue, and we'll see what the quants come up with in terms of the actual rating at the end of the show. But but it can't be at that level simply because it's not depicting those histories. That would be my initial argument. What it does do is a number of very slick things to ultimately get us to want to fund the police, support the police, as we often talk about here, just recognize the police as an acceptable institution, to see anything wrong with the police as a matter of bad apples. And as this Twitter person was attempting to say, and I'm so glad Jay Bruce caught it and brought it to my and our attention, to the extent that anyone would attempt to deny the racial aspect of this is almost understandable given what the slickness has done here, but we can't let that ride. Not around here. So, but again, not threat level Selma, but not a non-threat either. Not, as will come up in a little bit, a reduced threat, not a lowered threat. So first of all, given who the film stars, where we kind of, I think, and this is where I think I would probably need to pull up some more actual scholarship and lean on that to make the point more clear. But in what I tend to think in some ways kind of contradicted what I was just saying about the threat level, that given that this film does star Aaron Pierre, who we most recently did see portraying Malcolm X, I do think that there is something to be said for some kind of unconscious association with people who that happens when we see people depicting radical figures and then see them doing something else. I think it does create some kind of unconscious psychic relationship that reduces the radicalism of that initial subject. So when we see someone who played Malcolm or plays Malcolm play another role, I do think that there is some kind of an association there that happens. But I would like to get some help with that particular argument. I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking of Pierre Bourdieu and his work on Spectacle. But I have to go back. I have to check. I think Pierre Bourdieu is how you say his name, right? That was for some reason what just came to mind. But anyway, Huffington Post says Rebel Ridge stars praise Netflix movie for exposing injustice of civil asset forfeiture. All right. So this does require some spoilers here. So spoiler alert. If anybody needs to take a moment. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. This film is slick. So the film starts off, you see the brother riding a bicycle. He's riding a bike. And as we'll come to see why later, I would initially come back to this part and think, well, then why are you riding a bike? Because we find out he's trying to deliver cash, 10,000 in particular, to the courthouse or the town city hall or whatever by a certain time to get his cousin bailed out. And we later learn that this is a real emergency because his cousin is in some kind of trouble with whoever he's doing dirt with of being dealt with once he gets into prison population. And then ultimately that bears out to be true. So I'm thinking, why then do you want a bike? My man, why are you on a bike? I get it. We need to see that he's in shape. We need to see that he's dedicated and focused. He's got his heavy metal. That was another little subtle thing that I think is interesting in an attempt to de-racialize a racialized situation, by the way. Not that Black people can't listen to rock and roll and heavy metal and whatnot. My musical tastes are quite eclectic. Just as one, you know. At least at least partially, but I do think that there was an attempt, because the only music we hear him listening to is of that variety. And I do think that there was an attempt, given what we see in terms of the characters he ends up with, who we never see him with. It is an attempt to deracialize, to unblacken him, so that when we see, but I am thinking, why are you on a bike? Please, God forbid, knock on, if I'm ever in a situation where my bail needs to be delivered by a certain time, please catch a cab, get on a bus, Uber, get a friend to drive you. If you got $30,000 in cash, as we know he did, 10 of which was needed for the bail, charter a little helicopter. But please, I'm thinking bike riding is the last thing I'm thinking should be. Now, so the police end up following him. They claim he had done something. So we start off seeing the police come up with the lights on behind him, but he can't hear them because he's got his music on. They bump his bike to get him to stop riding, knock him down to the ground, and the hostility ensues. So of course, had he been driving, obviously there's no guarantee. Clearly, there's no guarantee that driving while black is a safe way to deliver important messages and money. But I'm still thinking, why are you on a bike? They knock him down, harass him, dig in his bag, see the cash, claim that it's illicit, illicitly gained, despite him being able to demonstrate, which I think is important, that he's got a Chinese benefactor. And again, I don't know if this is about expanding markets, if this is about diversity, if this is about, again, kind of de-blackening him. Because as that Twitter person is trying to say, and a couple of the reviews that one in particular reviews that I looked at tries to, make a similar argument about the suppression of race as an issue. And we don't hear him, like the cops pull him over. They're clearly meant to be ignorant, small Louisiana parish rednecks, but no N-word, no crosses, no sheets, no overt, just suggestions of him having drug money. And then, of course, they take the money, civil asset forfeiture. And then, as this and other stories have wanted us to believe, Pierre's character, Terry Richmond, is a black man experiencing the intensity and severity, and in this particular case, the injustice of civil asset forfeiture, Pierre told Entertainment Weekly in an interview Friday, adding that the film highlights our ability as individuals to actively not be complicit. So first, they highlight that he's a U.S. Marine. And this is actually important because, they again, in an attempt to want to deracialize him, give him this military background. And then, as we'll get to, in quite an odd twist, it's a very de-escalating, non-violent military, particularly Marine background, which is very odd, given that they also, in these reviews, start comparing this film to First Blood, Rambo and all that, Sylvester Stallone's First Blood. But this issue of civil asset forfeiture is wild because several of these reviews have wanted to make this claim that this is a film that exposes the deep-seated problem that we remember being bubbled up to the surface in the aftermath of Mike Brown's killing in Ferguson, where it was discovered that so much of the police, of their interaction, was to create ticketing and court fees to generate a local income. And we see that on display here in this film, and we're meant to see it. We're being told here that we should see it as a critique of that. Well, with all due respect to Brother Pierre here, he tells a fiction here. It's a fiction in terms of what the film, as we'll get to, is meant to be saying about civil asset forfeiture. But B, when he says here, the film highlights our ability as individuals to actively not be complicit. One, we're talking about somebody who engages in low-level military warfare and combat and conflict and risks his and many other lives and goes through all kinds of stuff. No way anybody, including any real-life Marine, is going to be doing on a regular basis in terms of not being complicit. But the other reason that this is a fiction is that if you pay attention and watch the film, he attempts to be complicit. His initial attempt is to de-escalate a conflict with the police by cutting a deal and basically bribing them, saying, you took 30 from me, keep 20, just give me the 10 I need to bail out my cousin. So that's not him not being complicit. That's him trying to cut a deal. Then he tries to file a claim. Then the claim is obviously not allowed to happen. And eventually, over this slow burn, never really bubbling to a surface movie, we never get any sort of payoff of conflict or that moment where you're like, oh shucks, he's about to get Rambo on him. It never really happens. So what we end up getting is someone who all he wants to do is de-escalate, not harm, be complicit, even to the point of bribing, only to eventually be drawn into this conflict that is itself wildly underwhelming. And of course, this article in the Huffington Post wants to remind us that Donald Trump reversed the policy that limited the practice of civil asset forfeiture in 2017. But okay. So as I said, we're alerted at the beginning that he's able to call, or that he's gotten this cash from selling a truck and cashing out of a business arrangement he had with a Chinese restaurant owner. Then once he goes in to try to deal with the bail situation, despite having his money taken, and sees that obviously he can't get it done, he meets a young white woman who we later learn is drug addicted and also in a struggle to regain custody of her daughter. This is all meant to put her in league and comradeship with this brother, who we can then see working in a unified, deracialized struggle against civil asset forfeiture. She's a young, up-and-coming, on her way to becoming public defender. She's not quite out of law school yet, hasn't taken the bar, but she's doing the best she can to do everything she can to help this guy because she understands his plight, because she's also in a similarly disrespected position. But, okay. But also in terms of the civil asset forfeiture piece, we get a speech from Don Johnson after it's sort of exposed that this is what's going on, where he's driving the brother to try to get him to get him out of the picture. And he's giving him this speech about why it's important that they do this, because it floats the local economy. They're able to have a budget that in technology and resources to support local or neighboring police precincts. A lot of people eat off of this civil asset forfeiture hustle. But that's the nature of the corruption. All right. But that's basically all that we actually get in terms of a real focus on that problem and what anybody would be expected to do about it, which in this case is nothing. All right, so let me just show one more, well, not one more, but another review here. Rebel Ridge Review, Green Room director takes on modern policing in taut, intense thriller. I don't agree with that either, by the way. It was not that intense. It was kind of slow. It never pays off, et cetera, and so forth. So again, in an attempt to deracialize the situation, you have him as the protagonist. You have this sister who appears. So she first appears as helpful, then she regresses to her role as a police officer, and then at the end she comes out to play some heroic saving move, because of course at the end, as we'll get to, the goal is to reaffirm that the police are ultimately good and there's only just a few bad apples. Don Johnson being one of them. And as this review discusses, and this is sort of the point, this First Blood riff. So they keep talking about First Blood because, of course, Sylvester Stallone comes back from Vietnam. He goes to this small town. This small corrupt police force harasses him, and he goes to war with them. So but the only the only similarity here is a military veteran is coming to this small town to try to bail out his cousin, and runs into a corrupt police force. But there is no real conflict with them in the way that we saw with First Blood. So this, as the author writes here, this First Blood riff upends expectations in its own right. That the tension unspools largely in broad daylight emphasizes how wide-reaching the town's conspiracies are, and we actually cheer when the police sirens eventually flip on. Whether it's the tradition of policing-centric movies, Rebel Ridge arrived. Whether it's the tradition of policing-centric movies, Rebel Ridge arrives on the heels of Serpico is referenced at a pivotal juncture, or the closer interrogations of our modern world, it's easy to understand the depths of Shelby Springs' dark history, that's the town, even if we occasionally lose sight of how individual puppet strings are pulled once Terry discovers them. Actually, that's why, again, it's important that we heard Skip Kuhn earlier talk about people focus on Pinocchio, but the problem is Geppetto, though. Because we don't really see puppet strings. We see the stereotypical sort of local head guy. But we don't see any of the apparatuses that actually allow this head guy to exist. We don't hear about or see how he came to be, what power structures work to allow him to be and produce him. And then, yes, we're meant to see at the film's end the police is the good guys, and we are meant to cheer for them. So okay, so let me just show one more. Let me show the New York Times review in PDF form, because I don't have it. I don't have a subscription, but Rebel Ridge review. Their corruption is his destruction. Rebel Ridge, written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, wears its First Blood, again, this comparison, inspirations as boldly as John Rambo sported a patch of the American flag. That franchise descended into Afghanistan, where Sylvester Stallone machine gunned the Red Army during the long Soviet war there. But Saulnier, Blue Ruin, and Green Rooms, a specialist in thrillers set in the margins of society, keeps this efficient tale of ethical outrage as simple as a punch to the throat, or rather, given its stark cinematography, like a shot of someone patiently walking up to a bully and then punching them in the throat. But that doesn't really happen in this movie, now does it? The patiently waiting and then punching them in the throat. That's barely, okay. Here, as in the real world, civil forfeiture, the seizure of money or property from people who have not been charged with or convicted of a crime, is extra income for police departments. Terry's situation, not an uncommon one, mirrors an incident reported in the New York Times in 2021. Terry will snap, but the dominant mood isn't revenge, it's futility. And that's, I think, an important line, in the sense that the conflict is such a slow boil, the hostility is such a slow boil, but Terry, the character, doesn't rebel. He doesn't overdo it. And in the end, he needs the help of the white woman public defender and a cop turned good after he's shot in the leg by his former boss. Because out of nowhere, we get that classic stereotypical, the bad cop is, this one bad cop is doing all the most, doing the most, and the good guy, the lesser bad cop flips and ends up siding with the victim and then joins them. And as they're driving off, black man protagonist, white wounded cop, white woman who was awakened out of an imposed drug-induced stupor to save the day, as they're about to be killed and overrun by Don Johnson and his corrupt police force, that black woman cop comes out of nowhere, knocks the sheriff's car out of commission. All the other cops then go from pursuit to protective, what's the word? What is the word? Sort of guidance. That's not the word. I can't think of the word. But they guide the victims safely to the state police, who are waiting to give them ultimate guidance and protection. So we are meant to applaud. The bad apples are taken care of. The good cops have restored themselves and restored justice, and all is well. One plot point centers on when a cruiser's dashboard camera starts recording, and there's a running gag about the linguistic shift from non-lethal to less lethal weapons. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Non-lethal and less lethal weapons. That hammers home the idea that damage hasn't changed, only veneer. The damage hasn't changed, only the veneer. But the script resorts to a go there, get the thing structure that sends Terry and his only supporter, a scrappy low-level court employee named Summer Anna Sophia Robb, skulking around to obtain taped evidence of police abuse. Given the unshakable mood of cynicism, it's hard to get very invested in their quest, especially when we're already aware of so many similar videos that haven't changed a thing. So this is another slick thing that the film does. And I think that this article is I think missing the point. The film is an advertisement for, remember when we had on, when Renee had on the guest talking about body cams and his outfit's research on body cams. One of his arguments was, well, their argument was, their research showed that prior to George Floyd's killing, the body cam producing manufacturing community was selling itself to police forces as something that would help them do their job better by capturing assailants and criminal behavior on tape, by proving that they are doing the good work that they're out there doing. After George Floyd was killed, they rebranded their advertising to promote themselves as providing the solution to the problem of police violence and their normal, the normal course of their carrying out the course of the normal course of them carrying out their duties. This film, while being, in some cases, as the Times article seems to be suggesting, promoting a critique of the failed footage and its failure to prove the police as unjust and ignoble, the failure of video footage to convict cops and do this, that, and the third. They're missing the point. The movie is going to the pre-George Floyd mode of promotion and saying, look, we can help you catch crime, because how is all this technology used in the film? They make a point to make it as clear as possible that you turn on the sirens of the car, of the cop car, and automatically the lights go on. The lights not only go on, but the camera goes on. And they start talking about the time you get. How much time is it recording before and after you turn the lights on? and it's promoted as a way of catching the corrupt cop engaged in his corruption. So it's promoted as a way of what would actually be helping law enforcement catch criminal behavior. It's not promoted as a way of communities defenseless against the police getting help from that technology and catching the criminal. It's because it's the good cops using that technology to catch the so-called bad cop. It's the Marine who we learn was the kind of Marine who's never sent to combat and who's used to train Marines in hand-to-hand combat meant for de-escalation, who says he's never been in a real fight until this conflict with the film starts. So everything he's doing is non-lethal presentation of lethal activity. So when he's choking out the cop to subdue him, he tells him either go to sleep or let me put you in cuffs. Dude taps out, gets put in cuffs. De-escalation. Dudes come at him with guns, brothers running around, unloading weapons, putting beanbag ammo in shotguns, emptying rifles, one punch knocking out cops. I mean, that fight scene at the end is wild. I mean, there's tear gas, or there's smoke all over the place. There's people firing all over the place. Nobody's dying. He's specifically running around unloading weapons to make sure that no one can be killed. He's only shooting people with bean bags. Somehow they're not hitting him. He's not killing anyone. It's the most un-Rambo thing I've ever seen. Although I know in Rambo, especially in the first, when he does attempt to not kill everybody, blah, 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 blah. So maybe, okay. But yeah, but in the end, the like it says here, the film makes clear that Terry was trained in a combat style that prioritizes discipline and de-escalation as an excuse for the lack of dazzlingly athletic fight choreography. Now, I don't think it was about not having a good fight choreographer. I think it was about them wanting to portray everybody in a good light. The Marines, hey, we're not out here just killing everybody. We do de-escalation. Not every Marine is some lunatic trained on Paris Island to happily want to be the first on the beach to go kill and be killed. No, we do de-escalation. Beanbags. We're as he's depicted, very calm, reserved, thoughtful. Sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir. And after that fight scene I'm describing, that's when we ended up seeing the good cop fighting the bad cop, siding with the protagonist, using the dash cam to save lives, getting an escort. That's the word I was looking for. A police escort against the corrupt police to the even less corrupt state police saviors at the end of the film. So it's a really wild form of propaganda that maybe is not too much of a departure from traditional forms of propaganda, but I thought it was very weird in this overemphasis on de-escalation and this dash cam. So it's really a call to reinvest in the police. The more investment in the police, the less likely they need to get into asset forfeiture. You have more body cams, more rubber bullets, more smoke grenades, more de-escalatory or de-escalationist, whatever tactics. And anybody who was looking for some, ooh, he's about to go to war, watch all these cops get it. No, it doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Even when in close hand combat, cop is trying to plant a gun and shoot him at the same time. He's able to work his way out of the car, get the gun away, tase the cop, not harm him beyond that, not kill him, and get away. It's wild. It's wild. So, yeah, I think that's all I had on that. You get the deracializing of this black man by making him a Marine, giving him the Chinese benefactor, the white woman supporter. And I think what's also important in that is that, yes, he's trying to save his black cousin, but we don't really see the cousin. The cousin ends up dying and it becomes forgotten about. There's no other black family. There's no black community. That's it. It's just him, the white girl, and now the good white cop at the end driving off. It's lunacy. So sure, you could say it's not about race because they made every attempt to make it not about race. And they were careful. I mean, yeah, you could have just had him be a white character and it wouldn't have made any difference. Except that, especially with the initial pull, all the interaction with the police, we know that that's what it was all about. But it was so you can, again, propaganda your way into funding the police, criticizing any defunding of the police, and the technology being seen as a saving grace, only bad apples who are dealt with by the greater institution, and they're not racist because everybody was a victim. It's wild. All right. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. All the links are in the show description. Please go ahead and tweet and retweet and tag Black Power. Tag Black Liberation Media. Tag I Mix What I Like. Let us know you're sharing the content. Let us share your shares. Let's expand and grow. Again, in addition to several bits of good news and forthcoming thises and that's, we got some really good news that will be announced maybe sooner than we think. But let's let the collective enjoy this collective win. All right. So did you all see this Coming from America series? Episode 1 just dropped on one of these streaming platforms. So I did get put onto it. I did watch episode 1 and I'm totally disturbed. I'm totally disturbed. It's and this is why we need the VP ratings, the Vernon philosophy ratings. Coming from America is about African American families packing up and going back to the continent. And there were about 3, maybe 4 sort of stories focused on in episode 1. And it's a real problem. Now, in terms of the Vernon philosophy, the problem for me is simply in that in a world of reverse hashtags, all efforts being made to disassociate Africans in the diaspora from Africans in the continent, and all attempts to reduce whatever pan-Africanism does occur to business and more or less conservative symbolism, that's all we get. That's really all we get. One family, the Kellys. There's not a lot of, the Kellys are one family. Let's see if I can pull something up here. Who consist of a comedian. I think it's his brother, and let's see if I can pull this up here. And his two sons, one of whom, the older of the two, performs with him in comedy. They have aspirations of being in comedy. You see him pictured with Kevin Hart and couple other, Tracy Morgan. But he's saying in the video, in the series, I can't get my career's not really going the way I want it to go, and so I'm hoping that if we move to Ghana, we will be able to, I want to open up a comedy club in Ghana and get my career off the ground. And none of it is like, there's a couple vague references to I'm going home. I'm just a man here. I'm not a black man because we're all black. I don't feel the weight of racism and it feels good, but it's very surface level. There's no real discussion. There's no discussion of any politics, ideology, Pan-African history, any of that. It's just all I just, vaguely, it's going to be better for me in this country, in this case in Ghana, and in Accra specifically. Now we'll see how it goes. I'll end up probably watching the series. I don't know. It's a traditional reality show. It's kind of, which I really don't like and don't watch. It's not really my thing, but I'll probably check this out a little bit. And let's see if I can just get this to. So like this is them. This is sort of the family. You see that's the main guy, Gerald, there, and I think that's his brother and his wife. And they talk about, kind of like, do I want to go? The kids kind of don't want to go. They do want to go. They don't want to go. And, but they're going to make the best of it, and we'll see. But again, it's sort of like a I don't know. It's like a black excellence fantasy, trip. But we need a VP rating for this, so stay tuned for the end of the show where we'll reveal what the quants have come up with. Because again, it's not threat level Selma in that it's not promising to be some history of Pan-Africanism, this, that, and the third. It's not promising to be some, Kwame and Nkrumah, the Kwame and Nkrumah story. But it doesn't. But for those of us who want Pan-African realities to be shown, it's giving us the only form that will be acceptable. With this one based on business, the other one is based on a multiracialist sort of fantasy and approach, an interracial couple and their biracial children who they talk about feeling the fear of being brown and black in the United States, and the pressures, the threat of the police in particular is mentioned. But so going to Zambia, which is their destination, is a solution. And I did think it was interesting that his wife, the black wife, has apparently some, and I don't know why people do this or how this works out in real life, because she's showing on camera, I have this hostile relationship with my in-laws, and they blame me as the black wife. She says is the black wife taking their white husband away from them back to Africa. And she's like, and then she says, and I'm not even African, I'm Jamaican. So it's that kind of pan-Africanism. So to the extent that and this is sort of what I don't really I don't know if it's gonna be a struggle to come back to the series. But I don't want first of all, I admit I don't like it's similar to what I'm saying about the Vernon philosophy. Not that I desire to see interracial relationships depicted at all, or the experiences of multiracial people depicted at all. It's just that I know that when I do, it's not really the form that I'm looking for. It's not one that's going to speak to me. So I'm just not looking forward to this part of a coming from America. You know, as they talk about this, it's coming to America, but in reverse. And I don't know. I don't want to get too personal here, but I do think I have thought in the past that people with multiracial backgrounds, interracial relationships do need to think and have some even loving discussions about how and when and where they enter. Who am I referencing there? Somebody in the chat will know. I can't even. Where am I getting that from? So this idea of this woman, it's like, I want to go back, I guess, and have some sort of African fantasy, and I'm going to bring my white husband with me. Of course, love is love, and we do what we do. But I do think anyway, more power to them. But I don't think that that's for me. I think I'm going to let that one. I don't know. Maybe it'll be like a car accident of some kind that I want to look at. I don't know. But seriously, I do think that a conversation could have been had. What does it look like? Shoot, I've been part of that conversation. I've been the one. People are like, I don't know, Jared. I don't know if this is your spot. So I don't know, but maybe that's not right. But maybe it is. It's where I'm at least. So I'm open to the criticism. I'm open to the criticism. Put it in the comments. Put it in the comments. Put it in the comments. Just watch your
phrasing.
All right. Okay. And another woman, we'll see if her story gets a little more interesting, but she's a faith healer and a single mother of several children and returning herself also to Ghana. And again, somewhat looking for a career boost. So I'm not really sure. Ultimately, so far it speaks to me. We'll have to see what the VP rating is. But so far it speaks to me again, not threat level Selma, but some kind of disturbing presence in terms of where we're supposed to be with where we should be headed with Pan-Africanism. And when we know the extent to which world powers have fought to suppress actual Pan-African unity, particularly in its more radical forms, this being what we get promoted to us is I don't know. And then I wonder if we're going to hear anything from the continental Africans. The only really so far, if I remember correctly, the only thing I noted was that the comedian was told by a Ghanaian that that Dave Chappelle was already planning to build a comedy club in Accra. And so I don't know what that's going to do. He kind of skipped past it, but the dude who was himself on the show saying, I want to do the same thing, I feel like you just glossed over a potential major problem. I know Accra is no small backwater town per se, But I do wonder, I mean, I'd be interested. Folks in the chat, let me know how many comedy clubs can Accra sustain, especially if one of them is Chappelle's. But we'll see. Somebody reach out to Daruba and get us some tickets. Let's go see firsthand for ourselves. But the Ghanaian told him that he said African comedy is different. He said it's more physical. And they like a lot of drag, he said. So we'll see. I didn't chat. Tell me if you know about that either too. That sounds interesting. To what extent is continental African comedy different? So, all right. One more bit of thing here this morning. And again, happy Monday morning to you. Like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. Links in the show description. Please put this in your socials. Let somebody know to join you. Don't be stingy with this good content. So much more goodness coming too. Announcements, projects, surprises, celebrations. It's a celebration. But so yesterday, I was invited to a panel convening virtually, but being held based in Bergen, I believe, Norway, and where they were having a conference on that involved sort of the intersections of media and liberation. And one of the films that they showed was the Black Power Mixtape documentary that came out about 2010, and which, when it did come out, and I'll put it in the show description,
and it's contagious.
I did have a review. Sorry about that. Turn that off and just. And so just quickly, what the documentary does is it's stock footage that the filmmaker found in Sweden from Swedish filmmakers who in the late 60s and early 70s came to the United States and elsewhere in the world to do a film on the Black Power movement. And the filmmakers, while of this film, while in pursuit of some I believe music footage, they were doing something else, and that's where the term mixtape comes into play. They found all of this footage and sort of put it together with contemporary interviews of today's, or at the time, leading sort of left of center Black artists and one or two scholars, including Robin Kelly. When the documentary came out, I think I was with Black Agenda Report still, and I wrote a critical review of it. I'll put the link to that in the show description, but I'll largely be outlining my issues with it, and that I shared or was wanted to share, was invited to share yesterday, including on a panel with this documentary's filmmaker. Apparently, he wasn't able to be there and wasn't there, so it was just me. And I'm not entirely sure if that has anything to do with him, because I did tell them when I was invited, like, I'm happy to do it, but just so you know, I did have a critique of the film and I sent them the critique. So if they wanted to look at it in advance and maybe have a response prepared or whatever, they could, or at least they wouldn't feel blindsided. And then I'm not sure. So anyway, we get this. So I don't know. He wasn't there. It was just me. But we get this footage, and then we hear interspersed over this footage, snippets of interviews, just the audio over that footage of Robin Kelly, Talib Kweli, Questlove, Abiodun from The Last Poets, and John Forte, folks remember, formerly of the Fugees, who himself was incarcerated on some, I think, marijuana drug charge for some years. It was ridiculous. But we need a VP rating for this as well, because, and this, I think, in some ways challenges the threat level, given that it is meant to be, it does focus on the politics of Black radicalism, which I think then does increase the threat, but we'll see what the quants come up with. Because remember, the quants are, you know, as they're preparing the final numbers of what will be the Vernon philosophy ratings, the VP ratings of all of these films that we're going to reveal at the end of the show. So make sure you're you know, just make sure you're ready for that. So the rating is likely to go up. The threat level is likely to go up for the Black Power mixtape. But a few of the thoughts that I raised and wanted to raise, I'll share here, and I think speak to, again, you know, the first was that somewhat similar to something Robin Kelly says in one of the unfortunately few, I think, truly important or relevant statements in the film. Kelly makes a point about sort of the fascination or and I'm not doing his point justice here, but I'll put the link to the documentary in the show description. You can assess yourself if you like. But he's saying something to the effect that there's something interesting happening in seeing footage of Swedish filmmakers in the 60s and 70s coming to the United States and documenting a movement that he says something to the effect had a potential to it that had not yet been realized or not. So it was like an exciting moment. In my mind, I wanted to try to play with that point about distance in terms of how I assessed the film. And ultimately slightly more negatively than Kelly did. So for instance, and ultimately what I'm saying is something that you hear Erykah Badu mentioning at the end of the film about the importance, she's one of the other, obviously, that it's important that Black people document their own stories. And we're hearing that, and obviously in a documentary created by white Europeans, even as they document her saying that. But it's that distance between that. It's that gap between the Black and white experience, the European and African experience, the colonizer experience, the class differences, all of these that create some issues, I think, here. Starting with the fact I mentioned they called it mixtape. So I did want to mention that admittedly, I have a certain bias focus on that history, but the mixtape in Black America does, like most things, have a particular history. So I was always a little bit bothered that they called this a Black Power mixtape when really they're using the word just because they were looking for music footage initially, and then they end up interviewing musicians and then calling it a Black Power mixtape. So it's not a mixtape in the sense that it's not a DJ involved, it's not music involved, it's not blends in that way involved. It doesn't speak to the particular tradition of unsanctioned communication in an internal colony in the United States. It doesn't speak to the specific nature and relationship of that history to the rise of hip hop, to the eventual, I don't know, maybe the downfall or the immediate co-optation. It doesn't. It's just a way of, it's just like they just were like, it's got some Black reference, we got some artists involved. Another issue for me with this distance is when you see Angela Davis being asked that question. I think we've seen the footage of many times when she's in prison. Shout out to Roberto if you hear him in the back here. But you that footage where she's talking about she's being asked while she's waiting her trial, I think, about violence, and does she support violence? And she's saying, what kind of question is that? My friends got blown up in a church in Alabama. I don't mean to thumbs up that. That's whack. My friends got blown up in a church. I've watched the police beating and killing us for however many ever eons. I've the war machine in this country, and then you want to ask me about violence. It's her explaining that distance from her interviewer that I feel is at play even in a documentary that's playing that clip. And then what we end up getting, with the exception of a couple of, it's not much really, a couple of important statements from Robin Kelly contextualizing some things, and he's not really allowed to cook much at all. So it's not, I mean, there's really not much, given the time they gave him or what was edited out of his overall interview. There's not much he could have done. But what we end up getting is a lot of time spent listening to Talib Kweli and Questlove and Erykah Badu and John Forte, who's is a little more substantive given his incarcerated experience, his experience with incarceration. And I don't mean to hate on artists, but you're calling it a mixtape because you interview musicians, but you're not hearing them play any music. So I'm not, and again, so I was trying to think of a way of putting this, but like, I'm not saying that musicians, by the nature of their art or their fame being associated with art, that they can't comment appropriately on these histories and politics. But what I am saying is you got them because of their music, not because of their political analysis and their work in these histories. So it would be like saying, Robin Kelly is coming to give a talk, and then he sits down and shows us that he might be kind of competent on a saxophone. I don't know if he is or not, or a piano. And you might be like, all right, yeah, he can play a little bit, but that's not what I came here to see. Like, he's not if I want to hear somebody rock on piano and saxophone, it's not gonna be Robin Kelly. Somebody go get me somebody. So this is sort of a problem that I have. So it's almost like, again, this distance that's been created from the subject and from the politics is, again, we found this footage. Let's get some famous artists to talk about it and put a documentary together. But you're not inviting people to speak on that historical footage who have a demonstrated, practiced affinity, experience with, engagement with those politics today. So there's nobody from Kwame Ture's current existing organization speaking, the AAPRP. There's nobody there to speak specifically about the ideas of Black liberation and defining pan-Africanism and why socialism was important and why armed struggle was important. And we get clips of interviews and statements from back in the day, but the contemporary discussion from the very beginning does exactly what I think raises the threat level for the VP rating that this might end up with. Because immediately we get Talib Kweli speaking against the politics of Kwame Ture. Out the gate, the first thing we hear is Talib Kweli countering Kwame Ture by negatively juxtaposing him to Martin Luther King by saying, yeah, Kwame Ture was important. Stokely and Carmichael was important, in part because he recognized that while he was to the left of Dr. King, that Dr. King was still of value. And then we ultimately end up seeing, as Talib Kweli tells us, that Dr. King's passive resistance worked, he says. But Dr. King, in his own lifetime, at the end of his own lifetime, was saying his own work had not worked. He was, in his own words, saying the civil rights movement was like running the football to the 50-yard line and claiming a touchdown. And yet here, the pundit expertise added to the contemporary element of this film is telling us, no. Stokely was cool, but King and his passive resistance worked. So this is the world. This world is the post having worked. Where Dr. King himself said, no, this is not, my own movement has not worked. But Kweli comes back to tell us in 2010 that it did work. But this is the issue. You're asking Talib Kweli. Great rapper, smart guy. I did note that he also hosts a podcast, a commercially based podcast that welcomes Black capitalist logic, even when it's there to openly criticize me. Shout out to Tory Russell. By the way, didn't Tory Russell, not that I'm inviting my own demise, of course, but he did say that 2024 was going to be the end of my way of thinking and my anti-Black capitalist logic. Salute to Tory. No disrespect, but that was a wild comment, my guy. Unnecessary as well. But okay, but that's Talib Kweli, hosting Tory Russell to talk about the values of Black business and the shortcomings of Jared's analysis. What were those shortcomings? We don't know. We don't know. There was no follow-up. There was no. But okay, but here we get to hear Talib saying, no, because King's passive resistance worked. Robin Kelly, for all of his valuable contribution. And look, please, unmatched as a scholar. Certainly, I'm nowhere. Okay. But this is the same Robin Kelly that, of course, I have to remind positively promotes and supports the work of Peniel Joseph. So Peniel Joseph, who, according to Kelly, is our premier interpreter of Black Power, is someone who condemns Stokely and Kwame Ture's way of thinking and that version of Black Power. So what we end up getting, as is often the case, as is often the problem that I always want to confront, is when these histories and movements are being depicted and told by and reported and analyzed by people who do not agree with them. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with them to perform a good analysis. It's just that we don't ever hear from the people who agreed with those politics, offering their analysis of those politics. We get the Peniel Josephs. So when Robin Kelly is in this documentary adding intellectual substance to the extent that it could be in this situation to this history, we would now know that a few years after this, he's going to come out defending work from Peniel Joseph that is diametrically opposed to the politics, that condemns the politics of Kwame Ture, that says he's irrelevant because he left and went left of the Democratic Party. Angela Davis presented, of course, and I think I made a note here. I think Robin Kelly talks about the Swedish innocence in the lens that they were bringing to bear on this. And I'm noting that, yeah, there's innocence even in talking to Robin Kelly, in that you know him because he's famous. You don't know him necessarily because of his work. Obviously, Peniel's work had not come out yet, so they can't be pre-condemning him. But it's similar to what I'm seeing with the spokespeople that they got. You're getting people because of a name, not necessarily an understanding of their work or their relationship to this history. Now, Kelly's not a bad one to get. I just wonder to what extent a future promotion of Joseph in that present moment limited his analysis of that film. I don't know. That part doesn't matter. The point is, I think that there's something to be said of, the point that I'm getting at is that the people who are talking about these politics don't really support those politics in that way and in the modern form or in any really observable way. And yet they're the ones having the conversation. Angela Davis is there, of course, central to the history being discussed, but the contemporary Angela Davis is not politically where the reference to Angela Davis was, and is in this instance, while commenting on the value of Black power and Black liberation, supporting electorally the opposite. The Roots, Questlove is there. And of course, as I've lamented routinely, presenting themselves as a progressive rap group Here's Questlove now being a caricature of himself playing for Jimmy Fallon after having played a caricature of that caricature in the film Bamboozled. So again, I don't know where they are behind the scenes, but overtly, this is another display of non. This is Kwame Ture's Black visibility is not Black power, and yet it's Black visibility commenting on Black power. George Jackson and Attica, Jonathan and George Jackson and Attica all mentioned in passingly, and they come and go as quickly as in real life in this film. And very slickly, if you watch the film, you have to be watching the film, that during one of the moments where they're showing a clip of a rally, you see the transcription of some of the comments, and apparently someone that we do not hear in the film makes a reference to political prisoners. So you see the phrase political prisoner pop up on screen, but there's no discussion or reference to it by anyone talking. So we don't hear Angela Davis reflecting in 2010 on George and Jonathan. We don't hear her saying anything about Rochelle McGee. We hear no one talking about all of those who were still alive at the time: Mutulu, Sundiata, Rochelle, Russell Maroon Schultz. Like, they were all still alive then, but none of them are mentioned by anyone in this film, because I think of, again, the political orientation of those that were chosen and selected for conversation. And again, this is what I was, so I did mention this on the panel. I talked a little bit about this and what I wrote about, which is basically just a kind of summary of this, linked in the show description if you want to see it. But those are the essential points that I was just trying to make, that it wasn't to condemn the filmmaker, but it is to raise these contradictions that you're you're noting the importance, as Erykah Badu says, of Black people telling their own stories. And I would add Black radical people telling their own stories. But we don't have that. We don't have that capability. And in some ways, this film, even innocently, to borrow from Kelly's word, description of the Swedes, it almost innocently suppresses discussion of those politics and those and limits those ideas. And of course, nobody's going to tell a filmmaker, look, I don't want to be in your film because I don't really ascribe to the politics of a George Jackson. And most filmmakers, a lot of filmmakers, are not going to be aware enough to see the difference between whoever and whoever and whoever and whoever. So we'll have to see in a moment what the quants come up with, in terms of, they are still busily working, getting those numbers together to make sure that we get the VP ratings calibrated correctly. Because, all jokes aside, I think we need some sort of structured approach, a guide to help us through the maze of this increasingly sophisticated media. And that's why we need Orasami Burton and Tip of the Spear, because you're not going to get a proper discussion of George and prisons and Attica in a documentary like this. Just can't. So, and they don't talk to Skip Coon for films like this. They don't talk to, I don't even know anymore who would be it anymore, but whoever those actual MC, them, Marcel P. Black, they don't talk to folks like that for these films, because they're not famous enough. And the famous are famous because they're not talking about this stuff enough. So, all right, everybody. So here we go. Let's get to the big reveal. I think the quants are done. And you know what? I think they're right. I think what they're telling us is, what they're telling us is, we're going to reveal those VP ratings in Patreon. So again, there's no better time to sign up for our Patreon. There's no better time to like, share, and subscribe. get more deeply involved with this platform. So much goodness is on its way. So yeah, sign up on Patreon and go and come on over there and get access to the VP ratings that we desperately need. And again, I know you're going to be tempted to think, Jared, this is a shameless attempt to get us to drop a few dollars on the platform and support the Patreon. I understand how it might come across that way. I get it. I understand. I'm not mad at you. But it's really it's my attempt to get you to see the severity of the need for Vernon philosophy ratings and scores. So signing up with Patreon to get access to those ratings is just, it's not about a money grab. It's about inviting you to step up your intellectual. No, we're going to have some fun. We want to support our patrons. They deserve as much love as we can give them, and we want to invite you to join our Patreon. So we're going to drop the VP ratings for these for Rebel Ridge, Coming from America, and the Black Power Mixtape in Patreon. And salute to those who have been supporting and to those who are about to head on over there to sign up. And to all the good news you will likely maybe be first to get, although I don't know. We'll have to see. One of these announcements is just going to be so earth-shattering that I got to get the crew involved. I can't do this on my own. I wouldn't dare drop this bomb on my own. This bomb of love and goodness, by the way, YouTube censors. It's a love bomb. Maybe I'm saying balm, as in BALM. All right, everybody. Listen, again, like, share, subscribe. Please do what you can to support the platform. If you can't support materially, just drop a comment, like, share, put the tweet out, or whatever your preferences are, and support however is convenient for you. All right. Big shout out to everybody who was able to join us live this morning. To those who will see this later, big shout out to you as well. I think I'm just one quick perusal of the notes to make sure I didn't miss any little teeny tiny thing. Listen, I'm hoping the conversation around these films and whatever will continue. I'm looking forward to others on the platform joining the discussion around Rebel Ridge, because I'm sure I didn't get everything. And this level of propaganda is you know, we might need all hands on deck for stuff like this. I don't think it's threat level Selma, but we'll see. You got to go to Patreon to find out. And but other than that, again, everybody, have a great Monday. Have a great week. See you all on the remix and later throughout the platform. Please do all the links. You know what to do. Peace. Only if you're willing to fight for it. And I'll catch you next time right here at
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
What do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.